All right. Well, welcome everyone that's watching us from across the airwaves. I am so excited to be with two friends of mine today in this week leading up to Mother's Day, and that is Sam Ponder and her wonderful mom, Cindi Steele. I feel like I've known you guys forever. And just when I was thinking about who could I get, a mother and daughter who would both have some very interesting things to say, but two people that I admire equally, both as a mom and as a daughter. And so right away I thought of Sam and her mom. And so thank you guys for joining. I'm so glad that we could get together across the airwaves amidst Corona, all of the craziness of Corona.
And you would think we would know how to operate all of this so well now, and yet we still struggle.
I know, we're sitting here like, are you muted? Are you not muted? Wait, it's my fault. No, it's your fault. Oh my
It's relatable. I feel like people get it.
Yeah, I think we all get it. And now tell me, Cindi, you are in Phoenix, which is where you've lived, right? Your adult life at least. And Sam, you're in Phoenix.
Yep.
So you're so close. What are you about? How many minutes are you guys from each other?
I don't know, 5 minutes walking.
Yeah. We're one level away from the Everybody Loves Raymond family where people just knocking on your side door. Like, we had to have that conversation, like, Mom, you still need to come to the front door. So it is great. It's part of the reason, really the main reason, that we moved back to this area. My parents still live in the house that I grew up in. So for me, someone who has a bad memory, it like triggers all these memories every time I'm over there, and then watching my kids kind of experience their home and their yard the way that I did as a kid is really fun.
Oh, I love that. Cindi, so you've lived in Phoenix, and then of course, when I would have first met you, you were, Sam was not living with you. She had come to New York City and we met actually when she was, what were you, 18, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was a fresh one.
I mean, crazy. And she shows up in our church and we become friends. And of course we watch her go through her career journeys up and down. And then we meet Christian, and now the joy of having my two twin daughters who are 6 be best buddies and friends with Scout Ponder, who is just slightly a little bit younger than them, but they are great friends. And Sam and I doing so much of life together in New York City when we both happen to be there part of the but I think I remember, Cindi, when I met you, which was after Sam, it made so much sense to me, because I really, the older I get, the more I appreciate, and I'm like you, Sam, I have a fantastic mother who I can look to as a role model, who has been my best friend since I was born, and who I admire and look up to, just like I know you do your mom. But when I met you, Cindi, I thought, okay, now this is making sense to me. This is why this young woman could be as brave as she was, and maybe as a little crazy as she was, New York, and do all these crazy like red-eye flights and sleep on couches and all that stuff. But I want to start with you, Cindi, because I think, and I have older kids too, because of my weird collection of children. And I think the older I get, and as my kids get older, I realize that motherhood takes on a bit of a different flavor. And I would love for you to talk about what it's been like for you as your kids, you have 4, as your kids have gotten to be adults, and now here you are living so close to your daughter and a couple of your other kids. What is it like for you? What lessons have you been learning from your daughter, and how do you see your motherhood now at this stage of parenting?
Well, I go to the front door. I start by going to the front.
I get you. That's a great point.
I learned that.
Appreciate that, Mom.
I've learned less is more. That's another big lesson I've learned.
Now, right, let's pause just a minute. Less is more. That'll preach right there with adult kids. That is so good.
I can be a little overwhelming, because I've got all these ideas and thoughts, and, I forget they have their own families. So, and I don't want to be Marie. So my boys call me that sometimes.
I love that though. And let me ask you a question about that. Do you feel you've learned that through trial and error, or has it been something that you've actually been able to take some cognitive time? And because so much of motherhood is an experiment, right? Like, you wish you had a manual and you never do. But how have you come into that? Because I think that is a big, big deal for parents, especially as their kids get older.
I'll tell you, a lot of it kind of goes to one of the cool things about Sam and my relationship, because Sam is a sounding board for me. She is, I mean, I don't want to embarrass her, but she is so far beyond her age in wisdom. And some of that she's learned through difficult times, but some of it she's just learned by thinking through things. And sometimes she'll see things I won't see, and I trust her judgment. So if she says, and I'm not saying I've always been like that, you know, I'm learning to trust her judgment. And if she tells me, maybe that's a little too much, I'll plan Bobby camp. I do this summer camp for the grandkids, and I'm just making up something, but it'll kind of maybe communicate. I'll think, oh yeah, we'll have it every day and it'll be great, and we'll do this, we'll do that. And I'll forget, they have their own families, their own schedules, and learning to, kind of work with everybody.
But Lynette, I think that's one of the things that's helped, I know both of us so much in the transition, from, I grew up in a very traditional home where like the child was the child and the parent was the parent. And there was a clear like power structure there, but then you have to figure out what that transition is going to be to adult, and whether or not you're going to be able to have an actual friendship, or you're going to kind of try and balance parent-child relationships when you're no longer a child. And I think that's one thing I appreciate about my mom so much, is that I kind of came to her, I don't know how long ago it was, probably when I was still living in New York the first time, and just said like, hey, if you want to be close, and I want to be close, if you want to be close, we're going to have to be able to be honest. Because if we can't tell each other the truth and be like, hey mom, that's annoying to me, and vice versa, and her to be like, hey, this was not kind, or this was not good, or why are you doing this? To me, that is the great gift of a mother-daughter relationship, is someone where there's so much safety. There's like this undercurrent of safety that you can say things, and obviously I want to do a better job of saying them in a tender way, but that even if you're just having a bad day and you say like, mom, that's annoying, please stop, she still knows you love her, that there's this agreed upon structure of the relationship that makes life feel safer. I don't know if that's a weird way of putting it, but just like you've got someone where you can be like, today was terrible and I feel like the world's coming to an end, and they're not going to be like, wow, you're dramatic. They're going to be like, you'll be fine tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we have developed that, especially over the last decade or so.
I love that. Were you going to say something else, Cindi? Keep flowing if you want to.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I just want to, I guess, I am so grateful because of my relationship with Sam and how much she has really poured into me. I didn't grow up with a close relationship with my mom.
Interesting.
And so I didn't have a lot of, my mom was, she's still alive, but she's got some mental issues now. And she didn't have much help either, and so I had to learn some things about being a mom to an adult child from Sam, and it's been good. But
I love that. And Sam, how you put that it's kind of like that back and forth. It's having the safety and this trust in your relationship that you can be real, you can be exactly how you are. You don't have to try to be a certain way, but at the same time, you shift from just being mother-daughter to now your friend. But it's an interesting balance, because I've always had the premise that you really never want your mom to quit being your mom. Like, even if you're really good friends, we find those people that they want to just be friends when their kids are adults. And that's a little weird too, right? Because you want to be friends, but you want your mom to stay your mom. Like, there's some things that maybe you're not in a position to talk to your mom about that she's going through. And it's awkward when parents try to pull their kids into that. But I look at you guys and I see that. And, Sam is one of my running buddies, and we have processed all the world's problems on our morning. Mostly our own problems.
I was going to say, really just my problems, Lynette. Let's be honest.
No. And I mean, Sam, we've both said this, but I have said this to you too. What would I have done this last year without you? I mean that, just from a friendship and just parenting young girls and, everything. But you speak so often of your mom and conversations you've had with your mom, and that's so much of my life as well. And we're probably in the minority. We have moms that we trust. We have moms that are healthy enough, have a strong relationship with God, list the list that makes them capable of being that safety place. But anyway, there's just so much I could say about that, and I admire you all for doing that. I think too that when you live in close proximity, like you just said so well, Cindi, about, so you get this plan and like, this is going to be a great idea, but then how do you tailor your plan and your idea and adapt it to your kids? And maybe it fits one way at a certain season, it fits differently at another season. Let me ask you this, Cindi, when Sam got married, and now she's not just your daughter who's this emerging adult, but now you have your son-in-law, who we love very much, Christian, who's a wonderful guy. But you have 4 kids and they all marry, and you find that now it's not just a foursome, it's 8 people. And how have you, and maybe there'd be someone out here could really appreciate, how have you navigated changing your relationship with Sam once Christian stepped into the picture?
I guess, one thing I've learned, and, by watching other people, I am going to be the biggest supporter of all of my sons-in-laws and daughters-in-law. Whatever I can do to love on them, I do that, because I know how difficult it can be to feel like you're, not accepted or not an outsider. So I made, especially with my daughter-in-laws, I made a commitment to myself that I would never, ever say anything to them or their husbands that would put them down, or even just a kind of a critical thing. And I'm doing my best to, just be as affirming as I can to them, so they have every chance to have some flourishing in the larger family relationship,
Yeah. Can I just say, she has done an incredible, to the point where I'm like, you don't have to like him more than you like me, Mom. And I get it, because Christian is like, everyone likes Christian. It's fine. I'm used to that. But she has been so intentional. And again, that's something that wasn't modeled for her, and she would never disparage anybody else. But I'll just say, she didn't have that. And she is doing legacy changing. And that's one of the many things about my mom that I respect, is that she's not just I'm going to pass this down because this was given to me and nobody talked to me about this thing and nobody encouraged me or supported me, so you're on your own too. She's shifting the trajectory of that family lineage of, ours was probably like a lot of people who grew up in a conservative Christian home, where it's pull yourself up by your bootstraps and then thank God later. But there was a lot of just figure it out yourself. Mm-hmm. And my mom has done a really good job of not passing that on, in the sense that she's been an encourager of our spouses and not ever been critical to us about them. You know, they're just it can get so dicey on these issues. Yeah. And she's just chosen the role of supporter and, you know, make sure that they have more food than you could ever want in your entire life every time they come over. And, you know, just been really loving.
Well, one of the things that I love about that, though, is and I've observed, you know, as an outsider, but being around your family some, is that when, like Sam, when your parents come into New York, or when you and Scout and your mom had this wonderful trip that you planned, international trip last year where you all went together, and then I know Jerry came and surprised you, Cindi. I loved that. Yet I've watched that. So now you have Christian, and you and Christian Sam enter into this like blur of parenthood so fast, not without its complications. And but then because your mom is the way she is and your parents are the way they are, they can enter in and become this huge support system to you guys, practically, emotionally, spiritually, because Cindi, my premise would be because of the posture you've taken. You said, okay, I'm going to celebrate them. I'm going to let them be who they are as a couple, but I'm also going to I'm here for you. Whatever you need, count on us. And you're not worried that it's going to, you know, everybody has those lines, but goodness, I mean, that to me is so inspiring.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun because one of the things Sam and I both have that I didn't have with either my mom or my mother-in-law, a lot of the same interests, not necessarily sports, but just the world and travel and just, I don't know, we can just talk about a lot of different things. And so, you know, in addition to just, I always say, I want to help. Whatever you need, I want to help. And I know that gets kind of old after a while, but in addition to that, I just want to be someone that continues to bring new things into their lives, you know, and interesting things and godly things, you know, into their lives. And so that's one of the things that I try to do.
Lynette, my mom has done such a great job. My mom is, she says we have lots of similarities, and she mentioned the sports thing. Like, I just grew up in a sports household because that's, you know, my dad is a coach and all that. But like, I'm just like my mom in so many ways. You know, when I think about mother-daughter relationships, it would have been really easy for my mom to be like, well, my daughter works in sports. She's played sports her whole life. Like, we don't have anything in common because she's not a sports person. And then just see it as like, oh, we're really different. But instead, what my mom realized is we actually have a lot in common. And she just focused on those things. Like, we love to talk about, you know, world affairs and current events and travel. Like that trip that you were talking about to Paris was just so much fun because we're both adventurers and we could both like take 2 outfits and whatever, like figure it out. You know, my mom, you know, she won't share all these stories, but my mom has been this, like, I used to call her when I was little, if people know the reference, I used to call her Carmen Sandiego. Like, my mom was like this a little like mysterious, like I didn't even know the things she was doing in all these countries, but she's an adventurer at heart, and we had that in common. And so instead of focusing on the things that we didn't really share in common and trying to pretend, I always tell my mom, like, you don't need to pretend like you care about sports. I actually like having this outlet of someone that I have a lot of other things in common with. And so we've just focused on those things, and we have discussions about those things. And I am so appreciative. And I think for anyone who has a mom and a daughter, I love that my mom is teaching my kids about a world that, you know, isn't my normal world. Like, I don't want my kids to just learn about sports. My mom gives my daughter piano lessons, and we'll be like randomly talking to her about something happening in some country. And I'm like, all right, sure, whatever, you know, but just find those things where you do have similar interests and just press into that, and let those things grow. I think that's really helped us.
That is so rich and so true. And it gives courage because, like you said, at face value, you might think, oh, or I know as a mom, sometimes I'll think, I don't really know, like my son's in the music business. I don't really know about the music business. But then even just the asking of questions and then the talking about the concepts. And we've been talking in our house right now about how everything's changing right now and people are innovating. And how's that going to impact the music business? And sitting around and talking to midnight last night saying, what are you guys seeing? Like what's coming in music? And because they're both in music, both my son and daughter-in-law, and making those choices versus sitting back and kind of going, oh, they probably don't want to talk to me. I mean, Cindi, that, I hear about you in so many of Sam's conversations because you are so alive and you are continuing, even in these years, you and Jerry, starting over in many sense and having this whole new ministry and yet not letting that keep you from being engaged with your kids. Because you could just say, hey, great. I mean, I know some moms, they're like, did it, been there, done that, love what you're doing, but we're going to go live our life now. And you've done, to me, this real interesting mix of both.
Well, there's a danger in, I'm in my second year, finishing 2 years of seminary. And so I'm in Hebrew 4 and Greek 2 at the same time right now. Amazing. And getting ready to take finals on Monday.
Oh my goodness.
You know how difficult that can be. And I had these slave drivers for professors that are amazing scholars, but I'm really having to work. But somewhere along the line, and I can't remember exactly when it was, I decided I am not going to ever let that get in the way. If one of my favorite sounds is when there's a knock on the window and it's Scout out front, coming to me, and I just tell the Lord, you're going to have to help me make up the difference, however it's going to have to happen. But I am not going to let the things I do, whether it's archaeology or language or school, get in the way of relationships, starting with my family. So,
and I think I love that you said that, Mom, because, for people listening, they're like, oh, that sounds so, you guys have the perfect little family and you're all still close and everything. That's new. It is so encouraging to me that like, we didn't have a family growing up. We had a great family and my parents did a great job, but we weren't the kind of people who were just like sitting around talking, hanging out. Like we were busy. Everybody had their things. My dad was an attorney and a coach. My mom was working and doing all this ministry stuff at the church. All 4 kids were super busy. But however you were raised or whatever the theme of your family has been, even for generations, I think the lesson for me from what my mom has done, and she's really led the way on this, is that it doesn't have to still be that. Like we hang out now. We never did that growing up. Like it was just,
there used to be a rule, no hanging out.
You're not allowed to hang out. Like that was, because you got to go do something. And
right.
What we realize now is, man, so much of what did Jesus do? Like he was just with the people, really, he was a great like he was somebody who wanted to hang out with people. And for me, that's been so encouraging in this pandemic season too, is that it's forced us in some ways to appreciate these things that we should have been doing all along. Like before all this happened, we weren't riding the bike and just hanging out in their front yard. It was like, oh, we're going to ride the bike over there because we're having dinner and then we're going to leave after dinner. And now it's like and I'm sure sometimes my mom is super busy on school stuff or my dad's doing work stuff and that little knock on the window from my 5-year-old comes. And I'm sure there's a part of them because there's so many years of just, I got to finish this thing that's like, oh, but then they do it anyway. They come outside and they just sit. And my daughter throws water balloons and tells nonsense stories. And it's just, to me, that is the good stuff. The deciding like just because we always did it this way doesn't mean we always have to. And it's just been a really good example for me to know that like you get to choose what you pass down and you get to choose what you change in terms of like what your family looks like and how you spend time together. So it's been actually really good in what's been a difficult season, obviously.
Yeah, it has been.
I keep hearing you say choice, decision, growing, changing, adapting. and the gifts that come that way, and realizing that it might have been a certain way, but now, and don't you think too that just needs change? You know, seasons change. And I love what you said too, because some of my happiest memories growing up were just being with my grandparents, just being with them. I mean, this was back, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. We didn't have technology. We didn't have video games. We had a little bit of TV now and then, but I can remember watching television with my grandmother, and she loved I Love Lucy. And we would sit in her kitchen eating King Vitamin cereal dry and watching and laughing and laughing and laughing with I Love Lucy. It was so simple. And my favorite memories are when I was with her, not because she was superstar or I loved her cooking and all that, but we just spent time together. And I think in many ways, when you become a grandmom, and I'm one of those too, you realize that the best thing you can give them is just yourself, just being available.
Yeah. Sam kind of touched on it, but one of the things that we didn't do well, and I'm learning. I want to be a person that as I get older, I keep changing, I keep growing, and if I'm going the wrong direction, I want to turn and move, but we were just too busy. We were just there was so much, there were so many interests, so many mostly ministry things in the church, music. How long? I did church music for like 20 something years.
Wow.
And, teaching Sunday school classes and ministry, people here at the house on Friday night and Wednesday night and Sunday. There was always something. And I'm not saying I believe we should be involved in ministry, but there is a point where you've got to learn to just stop and listen and let there be some silence there for a while, to learn some new things, and so.
Yeah, margin, it's what we've been forced into in this period of the pandemic. It's like everyone's living in margin now. And what I've realized, my mom and I have talked about this. Can I just say also, one of the things that I highly recommend is if you have a strained relationship with like a mom or daughter or whatever, I think one of the ways that my mom and I have stayed close through, some rocky seasons in my life, in her life, in marriage and everything, is that we walk together. And we haven't done
like physically, literally walk.
Yeah, there's a walking path in front of where we live. And since I can remember, we have always walked together. And there is something that happens when you're side by side with someone. So you're not looking in their eye. You don't feel the pressure of like, this is a sit down conversation. Don't mess it up. It's going to be conflict. That feels heavy, I think, when you're face to face. But when you're walking with someone and like doing something physical, it just stuff starts to flow out. And you're getting like physical exercise. There's something that happens. I don't know. This is not a non-scientific research department here, but that has grown our relationship. And even if there have been times where the walk ended and it was like, and goodbye. But we always knew we're going to walk again, so you can just get it out. And I really think like no matter what stage of relationship you're in, if things are very surface level or if there's been a lot of heartbreak, just start walking. Who cares if you talk about the weather for the first 25 walks? Eventually stuff will start coming out and it'll give you kind of a safe place to process, I think. I don't know why that's been so impactful, but I always know like, I can just go for a walk with my mom, I love it. It's just this constant in my life that's been really helpful.
And the other thing is, actually it started back, Sam, when the girls used to always come over on Friday nights. So I'd have 3 granddaughters from another family, and then Scout would come as well. And I started lighting a candle on Friday night, and we'd make challah together. And so I started kind of observing the Sabbath. I really wasn't sure what Shabbat was supposed to be, but then I started reading and learning, and to this day, I'm not where I exactly want to be, but started observing Sabbath, and that has been so helpful. And I think Sam and her family are doing it as well, and it's a time that helps kind of slow everything down.
Mm-hmm. So I love that. That is so, Ron said, my husband's a pastor and he's very busy, but he came up with this idea like 2 weeks ago. We were in a meeting and he goes, one thing I meant to tell you, Lynette, is I really feel like we should start doing like our own Shabbat kind of Sabbath, start with Friday night and go to Saturday, because that's a good day for pastors who are busy on Sundays. And I mean, in just a couple of weeks, it has been like water to our souls. Mm-hmm. And our children look forward to it. They're like, wow, we know that we're going to get the full attention of mommy and daddy, and that we're going to create a family tradition. And I love, though, too, how you talked about walking. When my parents moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was living at the time, and they were in their 50s. They still live there. They're in their 80s now. But they did morning walks around this park. And my favorite thing to do, and I couldn't do it every day because I was working a lot, but was to get up early, and I knew what time they were going to be out there. And I would run the trail until I could catch up to them. And we would walk together for that last part. And I so often when I'm running by myself these days, I think of those moments, because you hit it on the nail stand. There's something about just being together, not because we're forcing conversation, but we're just moving forward side by side. And I love that. I mean, that is it's just a way to build relationship without saying we're going to work on a relationship.
Right. Yep. It's like a non-awkward way for stuff to just kind of flow. And that's why mother-daughter relationships are even the best ones are tough, because like usually the things that bother us in the other person are kind of things that we struggle with. And what I've loved about my relationship with my mom, among many things, is just whether it's on a walk or sitting in the front yard or whatever, just telling the truth. Even if it's like we're mad at each other right now and I'm going to need a little break, that's that there's someone in the world I can do that with, where I don't have to put on the everything's great, I'm awesome. Like, that is one of the gifts of the mother-daughter relationship, is you can just be fully yourself, because they know you anyway, you can try and pretend, but they know. So it feels like home when I'm with my mom. If I'm in some random place or in another country or whatever, that is home to me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love too, Cindi, it's, you guys represent this very healthy, very, very wonderful relationship. But Cindi, I'm not going to forget to mention too, for anybody that's watching, if you heard Cindi say, she didn't have that. I mean, she loves and honors her mom, but it wasn't the same. And it always strikes me as how in one generation, you can change the legacy, you can change the dynamics, you can make choices. And sometimes I realize too, that it may not always be your biological mom who has that role in your life. It may be other people who come in and become that mother, or have sort of that maternal role in your life for a season. I mean, aren't seasons so interesting, how people come and people go? I'm doing the message on this Sunday for our church, Mother's Day message. And I was determined to do a non-traditional message, like not the obvious, like, the biological mother of the biblical character. I wanted to go in and just begin to study to find these non-traditional types of mother relationships. And it's filled with them. I mean, over and over. And I love how God makes sure he meets our needs, even if it's not in the way we would typically expect it. And that has given me great hope for anyone out there who may not have what we've had with great moms. But God will not leave you wanting. There will be those people that will come in, make a difference.
Yeah. And that the story's not over, like there's still time. And even if your mom is not alive, but especially if they are, like if you don't have a mom around anymore, like you said, there are other ways to connect with other women, but also in doing what my mom did and like starting something new for the next generation. And for people whose mothers are still alive and it's strained, like, it's just never too late. It's not like a mom, no matter what anybody says, it's just never too late. I feel this so strongly for people of faith, that if we're going to say that God created the entire universe and then literally sent a son down in human form who died and then raised up, like, he can fix things with your mama, like he can. And I know I say that like kind of in jest, but I think sometimes we believe in this huge thing. And then in our day-to-day relationships, we're like, oh, this has gotten too bad, or there have been too many feelings hurt, or, it's never too late. And I hope people, even in hearing our story, like, it's complicated and messy in our family, just like in most families. And it's just never too late.
So good. So good. I love that. We say that on a lot of our runs, don't we, Sam? It's the story's not over yet. I mean, yeah. How glad are we? Because, and even when our lives end, the story's not over yet.
Yeah.
And we got our kids and they got their stories they're writing, and it's joyful. Well, I love you both. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing what you've learned and how you're working on it, how it's a journey. And for you guys, it's a literal journey. You live next door and you get to do walks and all those fun things. And Sam, I have to be honest, when you told me, when I said, hey, do you guys want to do an interview together? You're like, well, I'm not around my mom right now. And I'm like, oh my goodness. The whole time I'm picturing you in Phoenix, the kids are all going to your mom's coming over to you.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, bless your heart. You really are solo doing all this.
Lynette, for a while, my mom was talking to my children through a gate. Like we were in prison. She was coming to visit her delinquent children. Just from a distance. It's wild. Times are crazy.
They are.
Yeah.
They're very crazy. But as you said, what might God want us to learn from this? How might we slow down? How might we create Sabbath in our lives and listen and really hear? We were on a call last night with some of our church leaders, and we were in a breakout room on Zoom. And all four of these people that were on with us have either lost their job, gotten furloughed. One had COVID, young man. But here's the thing, and they're all probably late 20s, early 30s. Every one of them separately said, I've been through the toughest season of my life the last 6 weeks, but I have never been closer to the Lord than I am right now. In fact, I never even knew I could be this close because I've been so desperate and I've had no one but him. And it just encouraged me so much at what is going on a bigger scale right now with all of us.
Yeah, that's really good. And Lynette, can I just say that, like, you have, when my mom wasn't in the city to walk with me, you have filled that relationship gap for me. And like you said about it being an encouragement, I mean, when I think of you and the role that you played in my life, you have been the ultimate encourager for me when my mom was far away, and have just played such an important, kind of like you said, like, it's not like I see you as my mom, but like that people play different roles to like fill in the gaps, and God has used you so much in my life to do that. And so you already know how I feel about you, but I'm really appreciative, and thanks for, my mom and I have never done a Zoom together, so this is very exciting.
I wish we could do it all. We should just do regular Zoom calls because I mean, we just need each other's voices. We're all looking for voices right now, and you guys are two of my very favorite. So
and I just wanted to say, I remember when Sam was 18 and she was independent, kind of like her mom, and was far away, and she would talk about you and you speaking words of encouragement and destiny. And I mean, there were just, I remember several times you spoke words into her life that for me was such an encouragement, and just to know that you were there and there were people looking out for her, and that was amazing. So I'm so grateful for your role in her life from back when she was 18.
And look at her now. Amazing. I mean,
still a hot mess. All right. Yay. But I've got great people to live with. So.
Yeah, it's a real honor to hear both of you say that. It's been such a joy. Sam, I got to send you, I'll text it to you. Ron and I found another photo with he and I and you. And it was at one, and you're going to laugh because you were so cute. It had to be at least like maybe 15 years ago, or maybe, yeah, it was fun though. You had come in town and came by to see us at one of the services, and we snapped a quick pic. So we go back, and I'm excited that we're going to have more life to do together in New York City, hopefully.
Yes, if our kids ever get off their Zoom kindergarten together.
I know. But thank you guys so much just for sharing your story and for being living role models to so many, certainly to me. I just want to wish you both a very happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day, Lynette. Love you and thank you.
Love you guys.
Bye.